Hearts, a classic gaming symbol. They tell us how healthy our character is, we pick them up to restore hit points, and we all know that if you only got one heart left, you're in real trouble. But when did those little heart icons become gaming's go-to symbol for life itself? It's so ingrained that we barely even think about it. It's been around so long that we even see subversions like using literal beating hearts instead of a heart symbol, or that weird heart tattoo health bar from Trespasser. But who did it first? What game was the first one to use a line of hearts to represent health, and how did it come about? So first up, why hearts? I'm not going to go too deep into this part. Basically, the heart has been a symbol of health and vitality for thousands of years across many different cultures. Even in times when medical knowledge was pretty much non-existent, people understood that having a heartbeat meant that you were still alive. I was also curious about the symbolic Valentine's Day style heart. I assumed it was pretty modern, but it's actually way older than I expected. It starts popping up in artwork from the 13th century. The exact reasons aren't quite clear, and there's a few different theories, but the simplest one just seems to be that a lot of artists had never actually seen a real heart. So artists were just copying someone else's picture of a heart, which itself might be based on an even earlier picture that somebody else drew. So the design morphed over time and became more simplified. As the heart became more associated with love and affection, artists continued to simplify the design and make it more symmetrical and just generally more aesthetically pleasing. But who decided to line up a bunch of hearts and call it a health bar? Now the obvious answer is Zelda. The original Legend of Zelda used a row of hearts to represent Link's health. This is carried on in almost every game in the franchise. The system includes things like finding additional heart containers, partial heart containers, picking up hearts to refill your health. But is The Legend of Zelda the first game to use a heart-based health bar? Well, sort of. As far as I can tell, Zelda is the first game to line up a row of hearts as a representation of remaining health. Now, Zelda was released in Japan in February of 1986, but another game, Chubby Cherub, was released just a few months earlier in December of '85. This Cupid-themed game didn't have a health bar, but it used a row of hearts to indicate remaining lives. So not really a health bar per se, but definitely an example of using hearts as a measurement of player status, and it does slightly predate Zelda. Going back a little bit further, Popeye, in November of 1982, had hearts displayed in a row. In this case, it wasn't health or lives, it was a measurement of the progress through the level. Popeye had to grab all the hearts and fill the meter to go to the next level. If you were too slow, the hearts would break and you would lose a life. Dungeons of Daggeroth was also released in 1982. I had trouble digging up an exact release date, but I think it's slightly earlier than Popeye. It didn't use a traditional health bar. Instead, the game had a pulsing heart that beat faster as you neared death. It also made an audible heartbeat sound. This was inspired by the increasingly frantic sound that enemies made in Space Invaders. I believe this is the earliest example of a game using a heart as an indicator of life or health. Technically speaking, the first heart in any game goes back to at least the 15th century. That's when it became one of the standard suits in playing cards. Modern playing cards are not really so modern. They actually started in China in the 9th century. Early Chinese cards featured symbols related to currency as they were related more to gambling. As they spread through the rest of the world, different regions adapted different symbols. In the 15th century, the French adapted the cards into simple shapes: diamonds, clubs, spades, and of course, hearts. And eventually they just became the standard ones that we see today. So my original plan for this video was just to find out where the idea for a heart-based health bar came from. It's Zelda, Chubby Cherub, or Dungeons of Daggeroth, depending on exactly how you want to define that. So why is the video not over? While I was looking for information on this, I kept coming across this 1984 game, Dragon Buster. And I found a whole bunch of different people and different sites saying that this was the first game ever to have a health bar. And that just didn't sit right with me. I'm sitting there going, there was no way that the first game of a health bar came out in '84. There had to be an earlier example. So I did a little looking around, and it didn't take too long to find something. Excitebike came out earlier that year with a temperature meter. Track and Field, also in 1983, used a similar meter for speed. Punch-Out in the same year had a stamina meter. I think there's a line being drawn here for games which don't explicitly label the meter as measuring health. I can kind of see the difference for speed or a timer, but stamina in Punch-Out is definitely just your health. But that got me wondering, where did we actually start using health bar style graphics? For our purposes, I'm looking for a rectangle that shrinks or grows to indicate a numerical value. It's so common that it feels like they must have been around since the beginning, but as you go back in time, they're not as common as you might expect. A lot of early arcade games had no use for a health bar at all. You got killed in one hit and that was it. Numerical counters are common around this time. Early RPGs tended to borrow hit points or HP from Dungeons & Dragons and simply write down the number. For example, Rogue, the origin of the term rogue-like. In this game, your remaining hits, gold, armor, and so on are all just a printed number. 1979's Sheriff is an interesting game for a few different reasons. It's notable for being the first game with background music and the first project of a young Shigeru Miyamoto. It didn't have a health bar, but it did have a visual indicator to track remaining lives. I'm not sure if these are supposed to be bullets or cowboy hats. It's interesting that it uses both a number and a visual indicator. The objects represent the extra lives you have, while the number counts your current one for a total number of times that you can get hit. Rally X was a top-down racing game from 1980. You can see it has a fuel gauge that's presented in the standard health bar format. This was the earliest bar-style indicator in a video game that I could find. And it makes sense. Fuel gauges have been a thing in cars since 1914, so it's a logical next step to adapt an existing physical feature in a real car to a digital interface in a virtual car. I also took a look at Flight Simulator from 1979. This game simulated airplane instruments, but it kept them in the analog dial format with a needle pointing at the indicated number. Not really a bar. So I'm going to call Rally X the first game with a bar, health or otherwise. And that's it. Everything you wanted to know about health bars and probably a little bit more, as well as the history of hearts in video games. Before I wrap up, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been watching these videos. When I started making these, I really assumed like 20 people would end up watching them. So to have them suddenly get thousands of views and have all these very supportive comments, it's just really been amazing. So thanks a lot, everyone. If you think I missed something, be sure to leave a comment and let me know. If you have some weird, dumb question that you want me to take a look at, I'd love to hear about it. And thank you for watching.